Welcome to Selling in the Age of AI.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So,
Must-listen podcast for sales professionals who lean into technology without leaning on it. Dive into the future of sales with your hosts, the dynamic and inspiring Frank Somma, renowned keynote speaker, best-selling author, seminar leader, and business coach. Get ready for game-changing insights and strategies that value technology but place humanity at the top of the sales pyramid.
All right, welcome everyone to Selling in the Age of AI, where we talk about the confluence of technology with the mastery of personal selling skills. My guest today, I am smiling ear to ear, is the fabulous Paul Mosley. Paul's worked in the imaging industry for around 45 years. He's had many positions. I met him way back when he was a sales manager. But from that time, I mean, he's just grown enormously. He's had a lot of positions in the private sector with Global Image Systems and Xerox, president. Now he's working as an advisor with many independent dealers in the imaging space across the U.S. and is a partner in SBA. Welcome, Paul Mosley.
Hey, Frank, nice to see you again, my very old friend. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, man, couldn't be better. I'm so excited to see you. We want to help as many salespeople as we can navigate this landscape. I mean, Paul, right off the bat, there are people that are wondering why in certain businesses we even have salespeople. Why isn't it all just point and click?
Well, I think the day that we forget about relationships is the day our industry kind of goes down the tubes, Frank. I still believe in a good handshake and a good eye-to-eye sitting with a potential client and or existing client. I've noticed a lot of businesses now suffer when when they were doing more of non-in-personal contact. And I've seen businesses just yesterday and today thrive by instilling and insisting that the personal contact with our client base and or new opportunities exist inside of their business. And we do it very often. I actually train on that a little bit.
So, Paul, I mean, you're advising companies on how to grow their business, and you're mentioning that just as recently as the last couple of days, some of your clients, and this is in the imaging space, I'm thinking, right? Copiers,
Yes.
printers, VoIP, that kind of thing. So in the office technology space, and the people that you're talking to, you're saying you saw some real results from interpersonal skills being taught and used. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. Frank, we talk about this all the time in clients. I hold multiple sales meetings per week. And we talk about these sales reps' initial meetings as well as follow-up meetings in person with the client. And I can say this with the most assurity to anybody that's watching this, that the people that follow those guides are more successful than people that don't. People who rely on technology alone, and I know we're speaking to AI today, and all of my clients use AI. Every single one of them uses AI. But the people who follow the guidelines, which we speak about, and we change for every company, about in-person meetings and the use of technology, honestly, are probably selling 1.5 to 2 times more revenue than people who don't.
Wow, that's a big number. Reminds me of recently I saw a statistic about independent insurance agencies that are outselling the big point and click guys. Their business increased year over year. And it was at a time when everybody thought, the tech would take over. But there are certain nuances, I think, to learning what a client wants that really just happen face to face. Like you can't do it on a questionnaire. Do you think that's accurate?
Oh, 100%. I wish I could go higher than 100.
Yeah.
100% on that one. The personal skills that a person has in front of a customer, personal connection, I mean, when we're sitting in front of a customer, are far more reliable in impact and information than what we'll ever get, in my belief, on an email or. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, guys. I meant to turn that off. Frank, you told me that a long time ago. Make sure your phone shut off, right?
That's right. We go live.
Sorry about that, guys. I did think it was. It's far more reliable, okay, for us to base and consult the selling, base what we're going to share with the customer later on as a solution to their need. That information that we gather in a discovery meeting or an introduction meeting or whatever your clients or whoever's on the call want to call it is far more reliable in person, I believe, than what we get in an email.
Paul, if you had to narrow it down, like think about some of the best salespeople that you've seen, yourself excluded for a moment, because I've always been amazed at, I mean, even though you've been the president of the company in a leadership position for so many years, you know, you're also just a tremendously skilled salesperson. I think as a leader, that's a super important skill, right? I mean, you're selling your people on why you're still a great place to work and thrive, no?
Oh, 100%. We talk about it every day. I believe truly that my company, when I had it up in New England, was the best company in the industry for a new salesperson, or for that matter, any salesperson to work for them. And I made sure that every day. That was my job, Frank. My job in running the company was keeping those almost 500 people when we got done as my clients, and I made sure that every single one of them understood how much I respected them. Yes.
You know, Paul, you're not blowing smoke at all. I had visited your company way back when, and I can tell you the feeling was palpable. The culture in that place was absolutely spot on. It was management by walking around.
Yeah.
Paul wasn't an ivory tower guy. He was out there hands on, and I think that's to me that comes from the interpersonal skills that you learned coming up through the ranks on the sales side. So going back to that, Paul, I was asking you the best salespeople that you know in the business now, or even historically that you've seen. What do you think sets them apart?
There's a lot of, I've met so many, I would consider, great salespeople, and they're all a little bit different. All a little bit different. Some of them were extremely charismatic. Frank, some of these people, they were in my company and you met them.
Yeah.
And they could sell that charisma better than I could. What I believe a great salesperson has is a strong will to win and tenacity. Okay. And Frank, you know me that I'm kind of a hard guy to say no to.
Yeah.
You know, and staying after that client, even over a long period of time, was critical to my success. And at the time when I was really selling, it was mostly in person rather than
Yeah.
what we can do today online. I I could give you story after story about staying on an account like a bulldog on a bone, and for years before I actually made my first sale. So
Wow.
for me, it's tenacity. I think would be number one.
Well, you know what's interesting, Paul, is that in order to stay on that account for that long, the technology that we have today, like Salesforce or Sales Chain or Sherpa, whatever the CRM that you use, that's what's going to allow you to do that, right?
I think it's a lot easier today, Frank, if we use it as a tool, okay? Not as the means to the end, but as a tool after the in-person meeting occurred. But I'll give you, for instance, I take very, very few emails from individuals that I don't know.
Right.
However, after I meet them and I see them come into my email, I still get a lot of them every day. Now I feel better about opening them up. When you get to be my age, you get a little bit nervous that technology is, you open up the wrong email, your technology can go down real quickly. So
Yeah.
I encourage people to go out and get to know people and then use email or any other means. I even, believe it or not, even texting, I suggest we do, as an after effect of the initial meeting. And I
Right.
encourage it very, very strongly.
Well, I mean, I think it's important. One of the things I can remember as a young salesperson was managers telling me to steal with my eyes. And that's a pretty big component, I think, in the face-to-face thing. And there's so many things that go into that. And without saying you should be judgmental, but at the same time, you need to use the skills of a great salesperson to be observant as to what you're walking into. Do you have any memories of, walking in someplace and you thought it was going to be this, and then you looked at the company like, holy cow, it's that? You remember anything like that happening to you?
Oh my goodness. As a young salesperson, I won't name the account, but I can tell you the business, okay? They were in the rug business, selling yeah, household carpets and or oriental carpets. It was a very large company. But when I stopped in the first time, I didn't know that. Okay, I thought it was a one store shop,
Right.
and it ended up having 16 locations.
Wow. So it became a big account for you.
I had them all, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all 16 locations had a piece of equipment. Yeah.
I think you and I can agree that a will to win, right? Because desire, to me, desire wins. I always think desire is the do all and end all in everything. You got to want it really badly.
You do.
And you said tenacity, which persistence to me, I agree with you, like a dog on a bone. Persistence is a huge factor. Are there any other things that you think, if I'm a brand new salesperson, what other kind of things do you think I should be focusing on in terms of my interpersonal skills?
How about one I think you do very well, and you taught me a long time ago, Frank, is to listen more than you speak. Going into an account prepared today
Mm,
is a lot easier than when I started in 1980. Finding information out, excuse me, about the account.
yeah.
So you walk in sharp as a tack, then explaining very quickly what you're there for, but allowing your opportunity, meeting your client or your opportunity in the client, for him to do 90 or her to do 90% of the talking thereafter. Okay. And something that I don't see enough when I'm out today, I still do sales calls today, Frank, a lot, quite a
Wow.
bit. And I go out with salespeople and I watch their inability to take good notes.
Mm,
Where back in our time, Frank, I still have paper
yeah.
notes today, and we took an awful lot of notes. Okay, so I think great listening, being able to take really good notes, and then being able to reiterate with a passion to the client why you would be the best choice. So listening is huge.
I agree with you. I've often said to people, and I think right in the beginning of my book, it opens up with a story about listening to two clients that I thought I was going to lose badly. And, I compared it to like when you're in Manhattan, which was my stomping grounds, right? And you go through the
Right.
park, you see guys playing chess, and they have these clocks because it's about how much time you take to take a move, right? So you make your move, you hit the clock. And I've said to people, sales reps, if you're going to go out and see a client, imagine one of those clocks. And every time you talk or they talk, you're hitting the clock and keeping time. And if you're there for an hour with a client, it better be 45 them and 15 you.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And I think new salespeople, I think you were might maybe directing that question towards new salespeople. Quite frankly, I see the invert happening quite a bit. They're nervous. First of all,
Mm,
never be nervous. People are people. They're going to buy from you after you establish a relationship. And I know it's hard to get over. Uh, but when they go in the door, they think they've got to sell their goods
right.
immediately. Okay, and that's not what they're there for. We teach discovery meetings in which we actually do the timer, Frank.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we actually do the timer. So we watch that 45, 15 to be in an hour, right,
That's
split up.
fabulous.
But again, the client wants to know that you're knowledgeable too. So you got to have something to say to the client. Frank, you taught me a long time ago two things. Okay, there's two things. Most of the sales are made on the introduction and the exit.
Right.
And when you walk in the door, Frank, hopefully you remember this. Hopefully you remember this. You came into my organization and you actually taught people how to shake hands.
Oh, yeah. I do
You remember
remember.
that?
Yeah, very well.
I use that to this day. How to
Yeah,
walk
open eye
up.
beam, high lean. I learned that from a great book by a guy named Nicholas Boothman. He was an NLP guy like I am. And he was the guy that broke that down. It was a book called How to Make Anybody Like You in 90 Seconds or Less.
Sure.
And it was a fabulous thing. And I teach that at every talk I give today because, there's nuances, right, that happen in person. And this is the deal. The most important thing to me as a sales rep, selling any product, get face to face and be who you are. Just be authentic and try not to fulfill the awful media stereotype that's been created, right? My archetype is not, not Chris Farley and Tommy Boy. That I'm a professional salesperson. We as a group earn more than probably any other profession on the planet. We're well respected, we're well off, and we can't be thought you can't fulfill that caricature and make yourself a joke. So that brings me to two things. You talked about notes, and before that you're meeting somebody the first time. You can't do that fish on the wall thing.
Right.
If you are authentically a fisher person and you can relate to the fish on the wall specifically, it's interesting. But to come in and look at somebody's family portrait and say, boy, you have some handsome children there, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You have to be real. You've got to be yourself, introduce yourself, ask open-ended questions, learn about what that client is about. And then you've earned the right to ask even deeper, more personal questions, right?
And only after you earned it.
Yeah.
And Frank, you and I both know that I don't think, I'm 67 years old. So, I don't believe the technology, no matter what it is today, can replace that moment where you know that you've earned the client's respect.
Yeah.
And you feel that wall go down in the client at that moment. And
Right.
and you can't do that with AI alone or the
No.
technology. It's a
No,
great combo, but it doesn't replace it.
Paul, it's a great help. Listen, if I'm 30 years old and I'm listening to Paul Mosley and Frank Somma right now, I don't want that 30-year-old person to think that you and I are saying, get an inkwell and a quill pen and go out and write your orders, boys. That's not what we're saying. I love AI. I use two different CRMs. I have cadences that send out emails and automatic text messages. If you're going to be on my podcast, you're going to go on my calendar link. It's going to send you automated reminders. I use AI to look up certain kinds of lists and information
Yep.
I need. Even sometimes to help me craft an email to change the tone of it. I'll get in ChatGPT and say, this is how I want to come across. And so I love it. As a sales professional, I love it. I use it. I want you, younger than me, to use it. I want you also to keep in mind that people do business with people they like and people, as Paul said, that they respect.
Yes. 100. And then Frank, the point I was making on leaving the room, okay, when you get that relationship and you have that feeling when you leave the room, make sure that you shake the individual's hand again and say something very complimentary and say thank you.
Right.
And I even go as far as saying, well, thank you for being my customer. And the guy will go, well, I'm not your customer yet. And I go, if we work everything out, I'm sure you will be, right?
Oh,
And, it's assuming the close
it is.
in a general way, but, thanking that person for the time. And again, the same handshake, Frank, in everything that you and I entered the room with is the way that we leave. I
Hmm.
think being humble also is a characteristic that the best salespeople I know have. All right.
Hmm.
You don't leave the room high, you leave the room at the same level as your client,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. And I wanted to go back to something you said earlier about taking notes and that how we always took notes. So
Yeah.
what's interesting is today, most things happen on your phone. So you may have, a recording app, or you may use the embedded recording on your iPhone, or you may want to take physical notes on an iPad or an iPhone. If you're
Sure.
doing that, always ask permission. There's two things that happen when you ask permission to take notes. One is, hey, would you mind if I take notes? So subliminally, you're telling the client that what's happening here is important and I'm writing it down. The second thing is, if you're taking notes on your iPhone, it's super important that you ask if you could take notes. And you can even make a joke about it because, hey, listen, I'd like to make sure it's okay with you if I take some notes. I use my iPhone to do that. I don't want you to think I'm sitting here texting while you're talking. Because
Right.
if you don't say that, I will think you're sitting there texting while I'm talking.
Frank, that happened to me in a few meetings with my reps. They're on the phone, and I go, hey, let's put the phones away, right?
Right?
And no, Mr. Mosley, I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
I go, oh my goodness, and being my age, especially, Frank, a lot of buyers in this industry, we're all not dead yet. I mean, a lot of buyers in this industry are my age, and
Right. You've got to be
and,
able to relate up, down, and
yeah,
sideways, right? It's all people, all types. And being authentic, right? So Kinky Friedman, who's a major league wisecracker, right?
yeah,
Said something in one of his books. He said, "You can't fake sincerity," which always made me laugh because the definition of sincerity is it's not fake. So it's kind of a wonderful little twist there. But
yeah,
that's it. Be authentic, whether you're selling up, you're selling down, and because you've got to be able to find common ground with people. And I going back to the tech, we have cadences, right? We're using Zoom info, we're using AI, we're bringing all of these leads into ourselves or possibilities. Then we're sending cadences of emails and text messages and phone calls and so on and so forth. So that all works for you. But when the time comes that you've got to get with somebody, what do you think, Paul, in the beginning, what do you think are the things that, have you ever diagnosed, I should say, the things that you do naturally that allow people to open up to you? Like what kinds of, is it conscious for you or is it just what Paul does?
oh yeah. After I don't know how many thousand, sales calls, uh, uh, I think it's like you said. I think people understand when I walk. It's a relaxed situation. It isn't overpowering. I'm here to learn from you today, Frank. I'm here to learn when I go into a customer's discovery meeting, and the sincerity behind it. I truly believe, and if you don't believe this in your product and your company, you shouldn't be working there. That when I walk out of that room, I will be the best solution. Okay. And I share that passion with the customer immediately. Right. And so they understand that I'm there to work with them. My clients are my boss, or my potential clients will be my boss.
Right.
And I'll tell them that. I'll say, look, I'm here to work for you. And so the characteristic that I would say is I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
It's just I'm relaxed when I talk to
Yeah.
people.
Paul, there's a couple, you said so many things I could unpack there, right? So one of it is that you're learning. And what's so interesting is that after, 45 years in business and success at the top of the pyramid. I mean, you are wildly successful in the businesses that you've run and even those that you consult for and today, and you have been for a long time. And to be at the very top and say, I'm there to learn. I think if I'm going to give something, to young folks, one of them is going to be open your mind. There's
Yeah.
something to be learned from everyone. Ask questions. You'll be surprised what you can find out. Even when you're just out in the wild talking to people, you want to network and bring up your profession or whatever. But the first thing you want to do is learn about that person. Ask questions, right? And you'll find that if you ask questions about what's somebody's favorite subject, it's themselves, right? Ask questions about people and listen, and they'll open up to you. But I think your willingness to learn, and the other thing that you said that I want to go back to is that you're convinced that you are the best solution for that customer. And I go through this with a lot of my consulting clients, and most recently in the insurance world, and saying, you've got to believe that. If
Yes.
I believe that if you, in whatever my business is, if I am not the right solution for you, I'm going to identify that. I'm going to say, listen, I don't think this is a great fit for me, but I do know someone I can send you to because I have a wonderful network of people. But if it is something that's for me, I believe in my soul that if you decide to go somewhere else for that same product that I deliver, you're making a huge mistake. No one's going to take care of you like I am.
Right. And and I gave my employees sales service and everything else the ability to make sure that that client understood that throughout the cycle, that 100% we are there to work with. Do you mind if I just tell a little quick story to end?
Please, please.
Quick,
I
little
love
quick story.
stories.
All right. So a long time ago, you and I both know we didn't have the high-end equipment that
Right.
some clients need. And I went into a business and I realized real quickly that they needed either a really high-end Xerox and or a Kodak product. This is a large company. And I said to the gentleman that day, look, I don't have anything that fits that exact niche for you. I do know some people. I'll give you their names. Give them a call. They will help you. Do you know that outside of their print center in the company, I had every single other print device inside of the company. And the reason I got that, Frank, that sale that day, and the gentleman, like, I won't bring up a name, he said to me, he goes, "You're the only one that came in and told me that.
Right.
You said everybody else is trying to sell me 2 units to fit my print center. You came in and said, I don't have that. Buy this. I'll see you in the future."
Right.
In every other print device in the whole place I had. And so I think the other thing I'd like to bring up, if you don't mind today, because
Please.
I do have my notes,
Yeah, yeah, please.
is you got to be honest. And so, I mean, listening skills, you can relax and all that. But I've been accused of being very blunt in my life, bluntly honest in my
Right.
life. All right.
Right.
And if you can't do something, admit it. And if you can do it better than anybody else, express it.
Wow.
So honesty is a huge part of
Well,
everybody that
but
works.
I got to put a timeout right there.
I'm
If you
sorry.
can't do it, admit it. And if you can do it better than everybody else, express it. Paul, I got to put that on a coffee cup or something, man. If you can't do it, admit it. And if you can do it better than everybody else, express it. That was perfectly said. I'm serious. Put that up on your wall.
That's enough. Okay. Yeah, I just mean, Frank. I don't know. Sometimes I come up with these one-liners, I guess.
That was perfect, man. It's true. You've got to be authentic. You've got, and I think, Paul, the two things that allowed you to tell the person what that they needed something that you didn't sell. I think there's two factors in that. One is that you need to be honest, and that's who you are. You are authentically Paul. You're the same guy in the bar as you are in the boardroom,
And
and
you would know that.
yeah, I would. I've been in the bar with you and the boardroom. So it really is important. And then the other thing I think that brings you to that is having enough working. So I can't emphasize this enough with salespeople that, desperation stinks. Customers can smell it on you.
Yes.
And no matter what, if you just continue the work, if you do the work day in and day out, you'll have enough things in your hopper that when you walk into an account, you can say, hey, you're not for me. And it turned out great for Paul. That authenticity, that ability to say, I can't provide this service for you, but I'll turn you into somebody who can, gave him the rest of the business in that account.
Mhm.
And his ability to do that was based on his being completely honest, and that was a core value for Paul. And B, he had enough stuff working that he didn't have to be desperate and try to put a square peg in a round hole.
Frank, and you know this, there's factors in the business. Every business is a little bit different about how much you need to have in your sales forecast now.
Right.
We talk about that very often in the imaging industry, and I'm sure you know the math. I don't know exactly who's watching this today, but there is math to this whole thing
Sure.
that will assure you that you're going to get to your number. Okay. We
Right.
also teach that basic skill in some of the companies, and they asked me to do that. So you're right. Your forecast can't equal your monthly quota.
Right. 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 So you develop metrics for that based on the type of business it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, One thing I wanted to ask you too, Paul, is that, in each of our podcasts, we asked the previous guest to tee up a question for you. So my last guest, Chris Klein, told me to ask you, what's the oldest piece of technology you regularly use, either professionally or personally, and how and why?
Well, that's a different. That's a
Right?
Well, I could say something like the pen, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I could say something like the pen. Frank, I take an enormous amount of notes. Okay,
Okay.
when I talk to people. So now, no kidding aside,
So pen and paper. Yeah.
a pen and paper for me at my age, Frank, and I think I'm a little older, but we're around the same age.
Hmm.
Pen and paper is hugely important to me. The next thing I would say is that I stay in touch after the initial meeting with my clients very, very often. Okay. Back in the day, we would, I would send a series of thank yous or letters out. Today, it's extremely important for me to stay in touch with all of my clients via email.
Yeah.
Um, I don't text too often. I do use AI to help me, write some pretty elaborate things,
Right.
but I would say pen and in email. My clients know that I love them, and they know that because I stay in touch. I will never forget that you're not bothering a client if you send a thank you email. They're going to open up and say, "Hey,
Sure.
Frank Somma just sent me this. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Great guy, right?"
That's
Uh,
important.
I think a lot of young people, because of the way the technology has replaced the in person in their eyes, forget that.
Mm.
And I say to people all the time, never forget to say thank you, never forget to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And even if it's just, a couple times a month, send a guy an email, you're not going to bother him or a guy or gal.
No, and you can do that today. You can set up a cadence in your CRM. And
Sure.
then if you want to go and tweak the email, that's great. Or if you want to create the templates, you can do that as well, depending on the size of your client base and how often you've got to stay in touch. You create the templates, you set up the cadence, and you let it fly. I mean, it's easier today than ever,
It is.
than it was before. So thinking about that and what's changed in this time, where do you see, especially in your industry, the imaging industry, but sales, professional sales in general, how do you see that changing over the next 5 to 10 years? What do you see in your crystal ball?
Well, I hope to God we still have a platform of in person meetings.
Right.
I don't see if you want to be the best in this industry or any industry, whatever we're out there selling, Frank.
Right.
I'd hate to think that that goes away, and I don't think it can. All right.
Right.
So I think the best salesperson will have a use of absolutely everything that's at their disposal. And I don't want this to sound like a cliche or anything, right?
Okay.
But you're going to use the technology that we have available today, including email, text, AI, your CRM. I'd like to make a comment on CRM in a moment,
Please. Yeah.
but your CRM to be the basis of a lot of these recontacts. Uh, um, and so it has to be a combination of both if you're going to be the best in the industry, right?
Right.
You can't forget about the in person and you can't forget about the technology. You're going to have to use them both.
Yeah.
I rely more on in person. I probably should. My clients go, "Why do you want to come and visit me?" Right? Why don't we do a meeting, right? And I got to get there. I got to walk through the business and take a look at it. I got to touch it and feel it and know it, right?
Yeah.
So I probably rely a little bit too strongly on that side of it rather than the technology side. Long-winded point, get good at both.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're giving advice to people that are currently making their living, right? You're making your money on the commission side of things. If you listen to this, you're likely doing that, or you're in a
Yeah.
leadership position with people that do that. Can you think back to like maybe a person that inspired you or some great advice that was given to you at one point? Can you think of anything that was career changing in terms of a mentor or advice given to you?
There once again, there's been more than one.
Okay.
Okay, there's been more than one in my life that I sat there and I really was in awe over. I watched this guy. This is in running my business, not selling. I watched the guy one time that had arthritis so bad But every single day, he went down to the warehouse, gigantic warehouse, Frank,
Yeah.
got in a little cart and ran around that warehouse and said hi to the guys that were loading the trucks.
Wow.
Okay. I took that to heart with you. You said my walkabout management style. This is
Yeah.
very, very early on. And again, I can't name companies, but you'd probably know it. This was not a small company.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart every single day in my business. So I did two things. And this guy inspired me because he barely could walk, Frank.
Wow.
And I always went back in the warehouse. I got the best information from my warehouse guys, anyways.
Yeah.
And the truck's going out in the morning,
Yeah.
they gave me great information because the guys didn't know how to do anything else but be honest. Okay. Uh, and this gentleman always said to me, he said, always say thank you. I don't know where he got the number from. He goes, I don't have any idea, but the number sticks. He goes, you want to say thank you to at least 12 times a day. Make it a point to say thank you 12 times a day. And people will respect that. So those two things, no matter what condition you are in, get out there, see the people that are important. Those guys loading the trucks are as important as the sales guys sitting in a nice office in a nice system.
Absolutely.
And if you have, the ability to do that, do it every single day.
That's huge. Management by walking around is a huge thing, but it's so interesting that you had that example from somebody that could barely walk, but made it a
Right.
point to get to the people that some folks in the ivory tower may deem as the least important of their employees. But like you said, boy, you get a lot of good information.
Oh, oh man, we could sit there and talk for another hour.
Yeah, yeah.
All the great information I got by talking to my people in
Oh,
my
yeah,
work.
it's huge.
Go ahead.
So, um, as we get close to our conclusion, one of the last couple of questions is,
Yeah.
um, if you had to bet on a sales skill that will always be in demand, what do you think it is?
Hmm. That will always be in demand.
Yeah.
Hmm. I still think the interpersonal meetings.
Mhm.
I think people are not trained enough today on that. I can't see that going away from our. If you're talking about sales now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sales and sales only. I can't see that going away. So be really good at being yourself in
Okay.
front of people. Be really good at listening and establishing that rapport.
Hmm.
I think that's one that can't go away, Frank. Um,
Right.
what
Rapport
I
is huge, and it doesn't go away. I mean, I think we're still in a bit of a COVID hangover.
Yeah, definitely.
The upside of that is that the technology that allows you and I to do this podcast today, though we live, 2,000 miles apart.
Right.
So that's a wonderful thing that happened because of COVID and is continually used post-COVID. But, the expression that we use in this podcast and our go-to-market is kind of, go ahead and lean into the technology, but don't lean on it.
Right.
You got to support yourself. And I think that, this idea of rapport. So, Paul, one other thing I want to ask you, are there any charity efforts that you currently support or who you're in tune with? Any charities out there that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, there's a few. First of all, I truly believe in the Wounded Warrior Project
Oh,
that was established many, many years ago. We work with that a lot. My wife and I are huge animal lovers, so
oh,
we work with the local SPCA
nice.
as well. And there's a charity that we started to really invest in when we lived in New England. And it was a charity that helps women get back on their feet from bad situations.
Okay.
And we were building houses for them to stay
Oh,
in. and things in that way, because there's a lot of people out there, Frank, that don't have the luxury of a good marriage, or good friends to stay with,
Sure.
and they need to get back on their feet. So those three things. My wife still goes up there to their big ball every year, and
That's fabulous.
yeah, we do a lot. We do a lot with Tufts Animal Medical Hospital. If I could actually give you the names,
Yeah.
we do a lot with the Tufts people. They saved a dog of mine a long time ago.
You know what, Paul? It's refreshing to hear this. I tell salespeople often that, whatever your belief is in the universe, God, a higher power, whatever, if you have these fabulous skills, these convincer strategies that you're so good at persuading other people, you didn't get those just to line your own pockets. You also receive those to do some good in the world. So salespeople, listen, it all comes back to you. You can't do enough that it doesn't circle back to you. Use your skills beside making money to work with some of these charities. They're dying for folks like you, like Paul, to get out there and give them a hand and bring some of their business expertise in and loan them some knowledge as well as maybe some physical presence.
They love it. It's inviting. Don't only contribute dollars, contribute your time. Uh,
Absolutely.
Dollars are one thing, but your time is even more valuable to these charities. And my wife, God bless her, she commits a lot of her time.
That's fabulous. All right, Paul, any last thoughts that you want to give us before we wrap it up?
Frank, thanks for the invite.
Yes,
I
sir.
should always start off with a thank you. I don't know if I did, but I'm going to end it with a thank you. Thanks for the invite. Okay. A true pleasure, buddy. I've known you since the early 80s,
Yeah.
maybe middle 80s or early 80s. And you're a gentleman. And I say that with the utmost respect for Frank Somma. Every single time I get done speaking to you, I feel better about myself.
Wow.
I greatly appreciate you as a friend, and let's have some fun. I'd love to join you again on another topic or whatever. If you could use me, I'll jump on another podcast with you any day, my friend.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here and offering up, all of the wisdom to these folks that are listening. Today, it's pretty difficult to navigate the landscape with all these things coming at you, but remembering some very basic concepts as you develop and learn the new technology is, I think, super important. And as you said, that's what's going to separate, great sales professionals from everybody else, right? That 80-20 rule. So, Paul Mosley, thanks again so much for being here, and we'll end the recording now, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay, my friend, be good, huh?
Ready to take your sales team or event to the next level? Visit franksoma.com to discover how Frank can coach your top performers, deliver a tailored workshop for your team, or captivate your audience with a content-packed keynote at your next event. Frank's best-selling book, B2B is really P2P, is now available on Amazon and Frank's website. Here's a special offer. As a valued listener, mention this podcast when you contact Frank and receive a 10% discount on your first coaching session, keynote, or workshop booking.
That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Selling in the Age of AI. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of the topics we discussed, and of course, to connect with our amazing guests. I have to shout out big love to my production team, Neeks, Angelo, Nico of Digital Presence. You guys rock. If you want your digital presence to explode, check these guys out at digitalpresence.team. And until next time, remember, people can't point and click you. Be the difference maker for your prospects and clients.